Welcome to the Dynasty Dummies podcast. I am Zach Reed. I am joined by JMic and Matt Foreman for another Dynasty Dummies Rookie Hootenanny 2023 edition. I'm pretending like we've been here this whole time, assuming that if we just play it off, it's like we never left. But it's good to be back. It's good to be in your ears. It's good to be ready to talk about some 2023 wide receivers. JMic and Matt, I am excited to see you gentlemen.
This is hard to beat. A little bit of reunited, and it feels so good. I might ask the electronic devices to play that here shortly, but I am super excited for this time, and I'm excited to be able to be back into the swing of the Dynasty Dummies annual rookie hootenanny. Foreman, what's good, my man?
What is good is the phrase. Yes, doing well. Doing a lot of the scouting right now. So definitely this is the deep dive season. Yeah, enjoying it though. Really starting to get into it. I always feel like at the beginning I'm just like, all right, gotta get started. And then I really just hit the ground running here. So I'm kind of at that stage now where I'm just really getting locked in here.
And for anyone who may be new to the program, hey, we welcome one, we welcome all. We welcome those who have loved football since they were old enough to be pooping in Pampers, to anybody who maybe has come to the table of this dynasty banquet this season. Whatever it is, whenever you've come, you're welcome here with the Dynasty Dummies, and we're grateful to have you here. This is our annual hootenanny where we talk rookie prospects, or essentially college prospects who are going to be rookies in the NFL. And we typically take it a position at a time in each episode. And so today, what we'll have on deck are wide receivers part one. I'm so excited to be able to get back into it. But before we get to the nuts and bolts of it all, just to make sure that everyone's on the same page, essentially what we'll do is we'll work on setting the table for you, giving you our perspectives in terms of what we see in these players. And the key thing that I want to make sure that I emphasize every single year, we simply are telling you what we see on the film. We are not professional scouts. We don't get paid to do this. This is a labor of love. We very much enjoy time with each other, and we enjoy being in dynasty leagues just like you all. And we want to be able to try to help out as best as we can and give our 2 cents to help the community continue forward and make it a place that's accessible for all. And that is the heart of what we do. And as I said before, if you bumped into us by accident, or if you've been listening to the Dummies since 2015, welcome. Whatever it may be, you are welcome here. Zach, is there any other table setting that we need to do to ensure that we have hands clean, the food's warm, and places are set for takeoff?
So I think a couple of things. When we do our evaluation, it is for Dynasty Fantasy Football, PPR. So that's what we are actually looking for on film. We're not trying to NFL evaluate. We're not trying to tell you where these guys are going to go within the NFL draft. We're just doing our evaluation about how they will impact or could impact your fantasy football team. 2, there's a long way to go in this process. We aren't even to the combine, which is in another couple of weeks. We still have the draft. There are still final evaluations. So this is just a film work. This is just what we see, what we feel about these players, what they do well, what they do poorly, and how we think they'll impact you. And the third thing is specific to these wide receivers. And I think that a lot of people are poo-pooing this draft class, specifically the wide receivers in this draft class. And I think that part of this is because people are looking for the archetype that used to be the NFL alpha X wide receiver. They're looking for Calvin. They're looking for Dez. They're looking for Julio. And they're not looking for what it's evolved into, which is more of the A.J. Brown, Justin Jefferson. I mean, Jamar Chase is probably a little closer to that X receiver, but he's still got a little bit slide into the slot and make some plays that way. And so those guys that can create out of the slot, the guys who are versatile and can create mismatches with speed and quickness instead of verticality and going up and making plays at the catch point, and who can create yards after the catch, are becoming increasingly valuable in the NFL. And so I think that's part of the disconnect between this class and what you're seeing on Twitter and what you're seeing in the NFL evaluation streets. Alpha to me is not synonymous with tall anymore, and it shouldn't be. It should be synonymous with good, and there are more ways than ever for receivers to dominate, and especially for your fantasy football team. And so kind of keep that in mind when we rack this class, because there's some guys who are going to produce, but they're going to do it in ways that may not be quite as sexy as you're used to.
And I feel like last season with the 2022 group, that was as good a group as any to show you that these players are getting loose and being productive in all sorts of different ways. Really, 2021 and 2022, when you look at the likes of someone as slight as Devonta Smith really showing his stardom this season and being a part of an offense that is obviously as electric as any and going to the Super Bowl with the Eagles, to the likes of Drake London, who even in a very minimal sample size with very terrible quarterback play and very little usage, shows in flashes that really good things could be to come in Atlanta if they can get some things together. I think those are great points to be made, Zach. Foreman, is there any other table setting that you have on your end in terms of making sure that we're ready to be able to do this the right way?
I don't think so. I think, again, just making sure that do your own research. Again, the three of us are all going to have different eyes. We're going to see things differently. Your favorite podcast, obviously it's the Dynasty Dummies, but your second favorite podcast are going to see things differently than we do as well too. So again, I think I'm not saying take what we have to offer as a grain of salt. I think what we have to say is a great jumping off point. But if you really want to dig into these guys, just start. I mean, there's no wrong way to get started. Just watch. I mean, listen to what Matt Waldman has to say. He's been doing this for decades, it seems like, and kind of just pick up some tips. And again, eventually, you're just going to figure out what you like and what your flavor is, and you just have to adjust your process year over year. So, I think the three of us are probably doing a little less adjusting year over year, but I would say in the beginning it definitely took a lot of took some bumps and bruises there.
Very well said. Very well said. Thank you. All right, fellas, let the 2023 Dynasty Dummies rookie hootenanny begin. And we will start, and also just to make sure we're on the same page, we are pulling the rookie rankings from our good friends over at DLF at dynastyleaguefootball.com. And these rankings that they have for the wide receivers that we're going to be going through this evening are based on the rankings as of February 14th, 2023. So whenever you may be listening to this, just recognize that the order that we're going in is based off of that. And obviously, when we get to the end of this thing, we're going to talk about where we have these guys slotted for the 6 receivers that we're talking through this evening. With that, let's get into it. First up on the list, the 6'1", 200-pound sensation from the Buckeye State. Someone you may know by 3 letters, someone you may know who did work as a sophomore and did absolutely nothing the very next season, this past season in their junior year, Jaxon Smith-Njigba. People, by the time that we got to the end of the year, Jaxon Smith-Njigba was someone that people were even wondering, is he the best wide receiver on his own team? You talk about that prospect fatigue. Whew. Tell you what, when we look at the career of JSN, we see 110 catches, 1,698 yards, including a 1,600 sophomore season in 2021, in which he led the Big Ten in receptions, he led the Big Ten in receiving yards, and he was 3rd in the NCAA in receiving yards as well. The man gives you 10 touchdowns in his career, of course, 9 of those being in that 2021 sophomore season. And the production profiles go crazy for JSN. Zach, you kick us off. Talk to us a little bit about the things that you enjoy in reference to JSN's game.
Well, it was 9 touchdowns as a sophomore, but that one from his freshman year was incredible, getting the foot down on the back boundary. The Dynasty community, it seems, has hit the 7-year itch with Jaxon Smith-Njigba in just 3 short years. The pop and pizzazz of his astounding sophomore season has faded, leaving some to wonder what happened to the allure of the 2023 rookie class. And I think the answer is nothing happened to it. And Jaxon Smith-Njigba is just as radiant as ever. Over the course of his career at Ohio State, JSN made an art form out of getting open. He is exceptional at reading zone coverage, and he attacks both areas underneath, and also he slips between the levels of defenders into open space. I think Smith-Njigba creates easy throwing windows for his quarterback against man coverage, using quick breaks at the stem of his routes to separate from corners. He has very quiet hands, and we talk about hands and quiet hands and not body catching. He's catching the ball away from his body, which creates separation between the defender and the ball, and it also takes the ball away from his shoulder pads and chest, so there's a lot less chance of a bobble or a double catch, and so he does that really well, and makes nearly all of his catches look routine, even when he's in traffic. Smith-Njigba is also a willing and intelligent blocker, which you may think that doesn't really matter to me, but I think it speaks really highly of his football intelligence and also gets him on the field. Coaches recognize that sort of thing. He gets downfield and will spring his fellow receivers for extra yards.
That sounds like a pretty complete profile from a guy who was absurdly productive in that sophomore season at Ohio State. Foreman, what do you have for us in terms of what you enjoy about JSN?
I always love Zach's soliloquies that he writes about these players. I just feel like I have notes written down, and Zach is using his creative writing degree to be able to discuss these players. And I feel like we've got freaking Mark Twain here, and I feel like I'm trying to think of like a comic strip author. That's how I feel like when after going after Zach. But anyways, enough of my self-deprecation here. I think Zach hit the nail on the head with JSN a lot. I don't see a lot of negatives to this game. I don't see a lot of negative to his game. He's just always open. He plays well in traffic. He's an excellent route runner. He does a really great job adjusting his speed well, both in the route and after the catch. I think that he does show a good bit of a yard after catch ability. He's got good speed. I wouldn't call him a burner, but he does have good enough speed. He'll probably be somewhere in the high 4.4s. And at the end of the day, you don't need to be a track star. You just need to be quick. And that's what Zach talked about earlier, is not everyone's going to be Calvin Johnson and run 4.24. That's just not going to happen. He does release well, which is something you do like to see well from a slot player. Something that slot players, they get put into the slot because they're gonna be seeing less press coverage, which someone will talk about later. He's got good feet off the line and coming in and out of his breaks, like Zach said. Separates well, willing and effective blocker. It's just, I don't see the negatives here. I think if you're talking about negatives, it's off the field. And at the end of the day, Todd McShay has said some things, and he's been saying a lot of things about some of these players saying a lot of junk about these players. I don't know how much longer he's going to get away with it, but I know he wasn't feeling JSN's vibe, but count me not in that camp.
Yeah, I don't know what's up with McShay nowadays. I don't know if it's his big boy britches or what, but it is what it is. I don't know.
He's getting salty in his old age, it seems.
Perhaps. I think one thing I'll highlight, I think you guys did a great job of recapping a lot of what I saw as well. One thing I will highlight that I find to be one of the finest points of Jaxon Smith-Njigba's game is his ability to win with quickness and savvy, short and intermediate. This is going to allow him, with whatever passing game that he gets drafted to be able to win and have a role in the offense immediately. This is something that, as we often talk about it, when it comes to the hootenanny, the guys who are see it, throw it guys, and the anticipatory passers, all of them will be able to have a home and have a very safe, reliable blanket and playmaker when it comes to Jaxon Smith-Njigba. And I won't go too long-winded there with that, but that alone is going to afford him the ability to be special early, and we don't have to have this ramp up point or this waiting if he's able to actually get on the field early, which I really don't see how he's not going to be able to in his rookie campaign. As with any rookie prospect, we know no one's perfect. We like JSN quite a bit, it sounds, but obviously there's got to be some drawbacks to his game as well. Foreman, you'll kick us off here. Anything, I know you said there wasn't much, but is there anything in JSN's game that gives you just a little bit of pause when we think about his transition to the next level for our dynasty teams?
I think the limited capacity we saw him could be something that obviously he was seeing the third best corner that he was seeing that super productive year at Ohio State, but that's not his fault. Like I said, he's not the greatest run blocker. He does a better job in the bubble screen game. He's not a burner, but he's going to make his hay, like we've talked about already. He's going to make his hay in that short intermediate game, and that's the way that the NFL is going. You're going to have not everyone's going to do every little thing. You're going to have these guys that are going to specialize in these different things, like Zach's man crush, Jarvis Landry. I think Zach secretly has a Jarvis Landry tattoo somewhere. But yeah, he's not this hyper athlete, but at the end of the day, we don't need him. We don't need everyone to be these hyper athletes. He's a good enough athlete to be effective at what he does. But like I said, I'm not seeing a lot of negatives. He does a lot of things well. I wouldn't say he does a lot of things great other than separating. And at the end of the day, that's what you want these guys to do, is to separate. I don't care if you're doing it running a 5.5. If you're going to separate, then that's fine. Obviously, if you're running a 5.5, you're probably not going to do very well. But he separates, and at the end of the day, that's what we look for with these guys. I'm not seeing a whole lot of negatives here. I'm sure Zach has a couple things he's going to nitpick on, but yeah, like I said, there's not much here.
Very well, Zach. Over to you. Things about JSN that, hey, give me a little bit of pause here.
Yeah, whether it was scheme at Ohio State or simply limitations of JSN's game, he was not used as a downfield weapon more than a handful of times. And while being called a slot receiver used to be borderline offensive, I think players like Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jalen Waddle are slowly eroding that stigma surrounding slot receivers. Smith-Njigba probably profiles to join their ranks, which I guess potentially limits his role, his ADOT, and his access to air yards. But that's really all I've got for concerns.
That is probably the primary concern, along with not necessarily that we need to know what happened this past year with him not necessarily being a part of the Ohio State offense. And I know, hey, he was hurt, John. He didn't quite have it in him. And listen, we have no idea. We're not going to be judge or jury in this sense, but we do, or at least for me, it just takes me back to the Jamar Chase year. Jamar Chase put absurd film on tap and obviously was amazing in his year one as well. And I'm not drawing any sort of correlation. My only question is, what's the deal? What's really happening? Who is this guy? And when it comes to the fact of his lack of usage deep, now we know with Ohio State's passing game, with Ryan Day there and kind of what they've done, typically guys have specific roles that they'll play in the offense there. And there are plenty of guys in that offense who can take the top off all day, every day in that scheme. So maybe JSN just wasn't asked to because he didn't need to. And obviously, as good as he is everywhere else, it allows him to be able to show off those skills. So one question is, all right, is he going to be able to line up outside and do other things aside from just slot work in the short to intermediate? Will an offense see him and allow him to be able to leverage deep? And is he going to be winning a lot of deep contested catches? And I'm not to say that he can't, just would have liked to have seen more of that. But again, we're looking at a prospect that's really, really nice. And I think a lot of folks will be excited to have him on their rookie boards come drafts in May. With that, we move on to the number two ranked wide receiver from DLF. And that is one Jordan Addison, number 3 in your programs on the East Coast, number 3 in your programs on the West Coast. Doesn't matter if it's Pitt or USC, the man makes plays. And when we look at Jordan Addison, listed at about 6 feet, 175 pounds, we saw a guy who got work as a freshman for Pitt in 2020, caught 60 balls, over 600 yards receiving and 4 touchdowns in his freshman year, which is awesome. Then he follows it up as a sophomore, 100 catches, almost 1,600 yards receiving, 17 touchdowns for a Pitt offense led by Matt's favorite Kenny Pickett, I might add, that allowed him to be able to show off in such a way that he was not only an All-American, but the Biletnikoff Award winner for the best wide receiver in the nation. They have all that success. Kenny Pickett gets drafted, and Jordan Addison's like, you know what? I think it's time for me to go. This has been cute and all over here at Pitt. I want to actually do some fun stuff. And so he goes out and transfers to USC in the Pac-12. Doesn't see near the same success as he saw a year ago. 59 catches, 875 yards, 8 touchdowns. Still a productive year in a different offense with Lincoln Riley and obviously the Heisman winner Caleb Williams. But in Jordan Addison, we see a player, slight of frame, however, has flashed a ceiling that not many players have been able to flash when it comes to their production in college at the level that he was able to do it. Foreman, we'll start with you this time. Jordan Addison, he gives you some sugar on the East Coast, gives you some sugar out West, and obviously whatever the offense is, he's able to be productive. Talk to us about what you like about his game.
Yeah, so I think Addison and JSN are similar players. I don't think they're prototypes, but I think they're similar players. One of the big differences is Addison does line up all over the formation. He can play inside, outside. He's a crisp route runner. He functions well in space. He's got great feet. He's got plus change of direction skills in route and after the catch. Again, another guy changes speed well. That's something we see with a lot of these guys, or these first two guys, is they do. I love the way they're able to change speeds to help them win. Addison was used a little bit more in the deep passing game. He tracks the ball well, and he can win at all 3 levels. He shows good yard after catch ability, and he's got a good knack for finding soft spots in zone as well too. So again, very well-rounded player. Going to be someone who I think is gonna win early. I'll be interested to see what his size comes in at, but I mean, again, that really doesn't matter anymore. I'm not being a sizeist here. Just something to be interested in. I'm not sure if he's 6 feet tall, but at the end of the day, do I really care? No, I don't care if he's 5'10" or 6 feet tall. It doesn't really make a difference. But I'm always interested to see why the colleges do that. Like, why does it matter? Like, is it for the program? Is it for mama? I don't know. I don't understand what it's for. Like, just tell me how tall the guy is.
Major shout out to Mama Addison, because listen, Mama raised a heck of a receiver there. When Zach, if you're catching 17 touchdowns in a year, you're showing us the goods with whatever height you are. Tell us a little bit about what you're loving in reference to Addison's game.
Well, there's an old adage: never trust a man with 2 first names. And if you've ever had encounters with Jake Paul or Tim Patrick or Peter Howard, then it's probably your mantra. But make an exception for Jordan Addison. Addison, like you said, JMic, put up gaudy numbers as a sophomore at Pitt, 100 catches, almost 1,600 yards, 17 touchdowns from Kenny Pickett. Like, think about that. Like, process that for a minute. From Kenny Pickett. Addison then transferred across the country and led USC in targets, receiving yards, and touchdowns. Jordan Addison plays with exceptional pace in his routes, is similar to Muhammad Ali's rope-a-dope. Addison toys with his opponent, running his initial route at like 90% speed, and then he turns on the jets, accelerating out of his break at the stem of his route. He has good top end speed, but tends, I think, to be quicker in route and then faster once he's got the ball secured. Addison complements his ability to separate with exceptional hands, and whether he's making plays in traffic on tight window throws or tracking deep balls over the top of opposing secondaries, Addison secures the ball smoothly away from his body before bringing it in. I really like a lot of what he does.
I feel like already Jordan Addison has garnered several unique comparisons, and I won't go through them all. But I do believe that he offers the ability for an offense to do a lot of really fun and creative things, to be able to leverage him and put him in whatever space they need him to be. As Foreman highlighted, being a 3-level winner is going to get it done wherever you are. And I do believe similar to last year's class, he's a part of approximately 3 to 4 guys that you feel like, I can run my passing game through this player, but he can also leverage complementary spaces in the offense. And I won't go too deep. You guys are doing a great job. I'll keep us moving here. When we're looking at Jordan Addison, I do want to hear, Zach, in terms of the things that you're not as impressed with in terms of his game. Does any of that include the fact that no matter what he does, whether it's at Pitt or whether it's at USC, he finds a way with these weird, awkward, untimely drops at times? Does that mess with you at all?
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think the biggest and perhaps the only knocks that you have on Jordan Addison have to do with his size, and a lot of the drops are in traffic or not able to win at a catch point and that sort of thing. Although he's listed at 6 feet tall, having just 175 pounds on his frame makes Addison feel small. And to Matt's point, maybe it's a little bit of a relying a little bit on the program to squeak out that 6 feet. But he feels small, especially when he's moved outside of the formation. So when they split him out wide, I think it's a little bit tougher for him. He can also be bothered by physical corners. He gives in to being pushed off route. And Addison's use of pace, I think, seems to be an adaptation to overcome this weakness of being bullied. While he probably ends up doing most of his damage from the slot at the next level, he does have that versatility and talent to slide out wide, take advantage of mismatches. Wherever he lands, I think Addison's probably driving high volume and high production. The interesting thing to me is watching him, even when he's outside, he can play outside in. And that was something that a couple of years ago we saw with wide receivers that were underrated. We'll say that. I hate comps. I don't like to do that. I don't want to put it on them. But there are a couple of wide receivers that I think looked a little smaller, played a little bit inside out or outside in, pitch backwards, and it turned out that they were some real valuable fantasy players and NFL players.
No question. Foreman, what about you? Things about Addison's game, got some questions on.
Zach, just a quick question there for you. Was one of those players Garrett Wilson by chance?
Think further back and closer to the East Coast. But yeah, like to me, he's got like the little bit of like the Waddle Smith.
Okay.
And again, not comps and not,
no, you're similar players.
Yeah, but the way he can go outside, I think Smith actually is better at the catch point than Addison is. Like Smith actually played big at the catch point, even though he's small. I don't think Addison does that, but I think the way he can go outside, he reminds me a lot of Jalen Waddle. Like the way he can go outside and play back to the inside, he's kind of that queen chess piece. You can move all over the place, and that sort of thing excites me for an NFL offense that can get a little bit creative with what they do, because you can get him the ball quick, and he does the yards after catch because he's really fast with the ball. But you can also let him work downfield on a player and gain big swaths of yards that way too.
Okay, just curious what your I was just curious what you were referring to. Obviously, I know you hate comps, and the people who do this hate comps. The problem is the people who are listening to these shows love comps. So they want to hear, ooh, who's this person compared to? Ooh, who's this person compared to? Because it's easy. That's what's easy. You can take a look at that's a lot more, I don't want to say tangible, but it's a lot easier to compare. Okay, you think this guy plays like this guy? Okay, that makes sense. I've seen that before. I can see these guys, and I watch NFL more than I watch in college. Okay, that gives me a little bit more nuance to what these guys are thinking. So I think I see the pluses and minuses of it. It's something that we hate doing because, oh, you said this person was going to be this player, and they turned out to be. You said they were going to be X, and they turned out to be Y. Well, again, that's the type of player they are. There's different situations that are going to affect that outside of just what they play, like what their body type is. Anyways, I digress. I think Zach hit a lot of the big things there. That, like JMic said from the jump here. Just Addison's untimely drops or something a little bit to be aware of. Other than that, again, these first two guys, pretty squeaky guys. We're not seeing a whole lot of negatives here. They're not doing a lot of the and then like Zach said from the jump as well too. These aren't your typical alpha 6'4", 220 pounds. These guys who look like Allen Robinson, they look like Coolio. These aren't your typical guys, but this is the way the NFL is going. The NFL is going to quick guys who you can get the ball to quickly, and then they're going to do their thing. So I think we need to move to that as fantasy players, as the NFL is moving to that. I think something that we've been working slowly towards it, but we're always a little bit, I think the fantasy community is a little bit slower to adapt to those things at times than the NFL may be.
Well, yeah, you heard A.J. Brown is just a slot receiver. You heard Justin Jefferson is just a slot receiver. Before A.J. Brown, you heard Cooper Kupp was just a slot receiver. Like, to me, being able to work out of the slot now is not a negative. Most NFL teams are sliding even their X receivers inside some to create mismatches. So you're seeing an increased percentage of slot snaps for everybody. But you're also seeing those guys who have played in the slot already have learned how to beat zone coverage, because a lot of teams play junk inside and man on the outside, and so they're already understanding the concepts of sliding into space in zones and getting between levels and working between where defenders are passing off the receiver, between layers of the zone. And so all of those things are positives, even though we see them as smaller and limited to the slot as negative things.
Brief intermission here as we get ready to transition to number 3 guy on the list. I want to hear from you guys. And again, we can do this quickly and I'll try to keep the train moving. When you look at these two guys, which I feel like a lot of folks tend to have as the top 2 players at this position in this class, where do they grade out for you all when we look back at the 22 class, the likes of Garrett Wilson, Drake London, Jameson Williams, Christian Watson, Chris Olave, all those guys that went in the first round of NFL drafts last year? If you have it handy, I know I'm putting you on the spot here, where would these guys rank? Again, this is what we see on film grade wise to what those players were coming out as prospects. Zach, if you have, you can go ahead and go first.
Yeah, so I've got my film grades from those players, and so I keep my historical film grades all the way back to 2016, and I have Jaxon Smith-Njigba and Jordan Addison graded just slightly higher than Treylon Burks, who I had as my 1, and he was just slightly higher than Garrett Wilson, who was my 2. Now, Garrett Wilson, what he put on the field at the NFL level was fantastic. If you're going to go back and have me like re-rank that, he's obviously the 1, Olave's the 2, and then you start having the Treylon Burks conversation. But if we're talking about film grades, and I have my little notepad that says for Peter Howard, because he and I like to keep each other honest. So all-time film grades were CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, A.J. Brown, Rondell Moore and Jamar Chase, Corey Davis, DJ Moore, and then you're into Jaxon Smith-Njigba, Jordan Addison, Devontae Smith, James Washington, Cooper Kupp, Treylon Burks. Like, that's where we're at.
Gotcha. Very good. Foreman, do you have yours handy as well with film grades?
I don't have mine handy. I think it would probably come somewhere in the. I gotta get this stuff digitized somewhere so I can. I mean, I've got 3 screens in front of me, and I don't have. Obviously, having a new computer doesn't help that. Yeah, I think I'm right there with Zach. I think I'd probably have them. I love Traylon coming out of college. He does so many things so well, and I think he's only scratched the surface of what he can do at the NFL. And having a hopefully better quarterback play will help him. But yeah, I think I'm gonna be with Zach in that one where I would have Addison and JSN in there with the. I think I would have had Jameson Williams as my 2. But I think that's kind of picking your flavor there. Again, Jameson Williams similar to JSN and that huge seasons one year and then basically nothing the other 2 years. So I think I'd probably have them just a step below Jameson. I love Jameson Williams 2020, 2022 tape. Oh, it was so good. Or 2021. What year was 2021 tape? 2021 tape. It was a thing of beauty. But I think I'd probably have them in that tier with Wilson and Olave.
Very good. Awesome. Thank you guys for entertaining that for a moment. I think it's always fun to be able to look back and figure out, hey, when it comes to film grades, like how do we feel about those guys and kind of where do these guys also rank in? Speaking of not prototypical alphas, we're actually going to get to the prototypical looking alpha here when we get to the number three ranked wide receiver on DLF's list here that we're going off of, 6'4". And in some places, you see 193 pounds. In some places, you might see as much as 215 pounds. I think the combine is going to be a lot of fun to be able to see exactly how tall, how big this player is. But we're going all the way down to the Dallas-Fort Worth area, Texas Christian's own Quentin Johnston. Again, 6'4", massive fella. And really his rise to prominence came with TCU's run to the college football playoff and going in there and shocking the world and going to the championship game there to be able to take on Georgia. And obviously they got boat race, but Quentin Johnston had a steady incline in it when it came to his career. Freshman season, 22 catches, 487 yards. Sophomore year, 33 catches, 634 yards. And then this past season in 2022, the junior went crazy, 60 catches, 1,069 yards, 6 touchdowns, and really was the driving force behind a passing offense that I will say, shout out to Sonny Dykes, does a lot of really fun things and made Max Duggan look almost like a quarterback that you might want to see at the next level at the USFL. So I think that's fun. But Quentin Johnston did a lot of awesome things. Zach, we'll kick it back over to you to get us started with Quentin Johnston and what you like about his game.
So even after having his leg bitten off, Captain Ahab sailed the corners of the ocean in search of his 90-foot white whale, and the Dynasty community, limping from the disappointment of N'Keal Harry and Kevin White and Hakeem Butler, who I saw tonight in the XFL, continues to chase the next prototypical X receiver, that next Calvin Johnson, that next Julio Jones, that next DK Metcalf. And at 6'4", 193 pounds, and I do think he's on the slimmer side of that. I don't think he'll come in at 215, but maybe. But he's got a unique skill set and physicality, and I think Quentin Johnston is sure to be noticed. And success as an X receiver begins as soon as the ball is snapped. And Johnston has 3 distinct moves to get himself free of press coverage on the outside. He uses a jab, he uses a hesitation step, and he uses his length with an arm swipe to get clear of corners right from the jump. Johnston has the speed, I think, to get over the top of defenses, especially against man coverage. And with his height and his strong hands, he has the ability to separate vertically as well. So it's not just separation on the field, putting distance between him and a corner, but also the ability to, at the catch point, go up and high point the ball. His high point highlights are everywhere, and Johnston does a decent job attacking zones as well, sits in throwing lanes to create easy completions for his quarterbacks. he's really dynamic with bubble screens and hitches that allow Johnston to quickly transition to a runner, beginning sometimes even before the ball has reached him, and rack up that extra yardage.
And I'll slide this in now just to be able to help keep the train moving. But his ability in the short area to do really fun things with the speed that he shows off. And I don't know if it's a case of where people are thrown off, but I feel like it's just very almost the antithesis of what you expect to see when you see a player like him. You don't expect him to be able to take drag routes and go bonkers 60, 70, 80 yards with the ball. You don't expect to see him take a 5-yard in and be able to just really cut up a defense. And he was able to do that in a lot of spots, which I thought was fun. I'll keep it moving. Foreman, what about Quentin Johnston for you? What do you enjoy about him?
Yeah, so Johnson, again, like Zach mentioned, he's that prototypical guy. He's strong after the catch, and like you just mentioned, he shows that wiggle of some that would be much smaller than him. So he shows more wiggle than someone of his frame. Works well in traffic. He does a good job tracking the deep ball as well too. He can win at all three levels there as well too. He's obviously got great long speed. He can run by DBs. He does a good job of work at the route stem. I'll talk in a little bit more about that in the next segment here. But I think he shows a lot of things with people who want to see that size. They're going to flock towards Johnson because that's just who he is. He's going to show you that prototypical 6'4", 200-pound size that people are looking for in what they think that an NFL wide receiver should look like.
Yeah, and Foreman, I'm going to come right back to you quickly here. When we think about Quentin Johnston, and I think in him, people have a lot of hopes and dreams. Man, this is the guy when it comes to that size and what he's going to be able to do. And he's the one we've been missing out on for so long as the NFL changes. Tell us why he might not be what everyone hopes he may be.
Yeah, Zach mentioned earlier the runway for JSN might be that of an aircraft carrier. I don't think that Johnston's runway is quite that short. I think he leaves some things to be desired. I think he's a bit of a body catcher at certain times. He can really let that ball get in on him, and it lets DBs break that ball away or him just flat out drop the ball. I question his route tree. I know we question DK Metcalf's route tree. I don't think Johnson is quite the physical specimen that DK is. I think you're going to see those comps. Oh, Quentin Johnston's DK Metcalf. He's not DK Metcalf. He's just not. DK Metcalf came in rocked up at probably 230 pounds, looking like a freaking Adonis at the combine. And Johnston got absolutely murked, just like the rest of his team did in the national championship game. My man had one catch for 3 yards. We want this guy to be this alpha dog wide receiver, and your team's down to 50 burger going in the third quarter, and you can't muster up any defense or any offense here. I think, again, I don't want to let one game kind of factor that, but I do specifically like to watch these guys go against these more physical defenses, these defenses where we're having players that are playing at the NFL level. Great. You can wax Kansas and Mizzou. Awesome. I'm happy for you, my guy. I'm glad it's going to get you those couple extra zeros on your signing bonus, but I want to see how you do against real NFL players. And I think he did struggle to do that. He does lack some physicality at times as well too. But I think that's kind of, he's inconsistent with his physicality. He's very physical after the catch. I just want to see a little bit more of that before the catch.
I think the physicality questions, and especially what he did on the stage when it was brightest, people are going to wonder. And again, I'm not going to get into it. We'll keep it moving. Zach, talk to us about the downsides of one Quentin Johnston.
I think it's interesting that although Quentin Johnston played from the outside, he was rarely asked to make plays on sideline back shoulder, throws, to the outside. And while this isn't necessarily damning, that play is a staple of outside wide receivers, X-type wide receivers in the NFL. You see that a ton with players like T. Higgins. I mean, he makes his bones that way. Mike Williams does that same thing. Johnston does chew up ground in space with his length, but I think he struggles to get upfield when he's used on pop passes and jet sweeps, which you would think you see him in short areas and you're like, oh man, you can chase Claypool, this guy, you can do some of what they're doing with Christian Watson and get him the ball, on that little jet sweep. He's not very good at turning that corner and getting upfield, struggles greatly with that. His strength on high points is tremendous, but Matt, you mentioned it, Johnston is prone to letting the ball travel in on his body. And also he has ball security issues once he shifts the ball into creating yards after the catch. Like his focus changes. He gets a little bit cavalier with the rock. And I think that NFL defenders will punch the ball out both at that catch point where he's got the ball in on his body and also when he's carrying it out in one arm. I think it's rare to land a whale. There's no question that Quentin Johnston has a tantalizing skill set and some NFL potential to make a splash. But I do think that wherever he lands, Johnston will continue to rely heavily on big plays because his game is not going to translate to high volume. So to me, it's going to be interesting to see whether he ascends or he's just a fluke.
There's such, and specifically in this group, I don't know if he has the widest range of outcomes, but he is as high a variance of player, I feel like, as this first group that we're going to be talking about is, because of exactly what you said, Zach. If he's not going to be driving volume, then you better be amazing on the few that you have. And anyway, let's keep it moving.
No, you start relying on efficiency and touchdown efficiency and all all of the things that everybody was excited about Christian Watson for. Like that, it's that a similar thing. And I see Jake Anderson in the chat. I got to shout Jake out.
Hey, what's good, Jake?
It's so nice to see Jake. But he says, I don't understand the DK comps. And I'm with you, but I think that it's like somewhere in the middle of N'Keal Harry and DK. Because it's not quite the presence that DK has separating down the field, not quite the physicality, definitely not the physicality that DK has, but also the ability underneath that we got excited about and tantalized by N'Keal Harry. Mm-hmm. And so it's somewhere in that there's a spectrum there.
Stuck in the middle of you. What's up, Foreman?
I think one thing, Casey Myers said it best earlier today. I was watching him. Listening to something he had to say. He said that Johnston looks like a unicorn. Let's just hope it's not a donkey in disguise. And I think that sums it up very, very well.
That's great. That truly is great because he is an enigma if there was one in this group. On to the next one. Here we are, second half of the guys that we'll talk through this evening. And this time, we're going to head down to Chapel Hill, North Carolina, to be able to look at and talk through the amazing, diminutive wide receiver that is Josh Downs, listed approximately 5'10", 175 pounds. And listen, you almost feel like someone would have it made in the shade with a glass of lemonade when your collegiate quarterbacks are one Sam Howell and transitioning into Drake May. I think people would probably commit all sorts of felonies and misdemeanors to be able to have college quarterbacks to be as productive as those two players were. And shout out to basically every other program who didn't have quarterbacks that were as prolific at the collegiate level. Josh Downs in his freshman year obviously does not get a ton of play because if you remember, hey, they had De'Ami Brown and Daz Newsome, and they had Michael Carter. They had Javonte Williams, and that was an offense that just did awesome things, both by air and by ground. And so when we get to his sophomore season, and that's Sam Howell's final year, 101 catches, 1,335 yards, and 8 touchdowns. he absolutely comes on the scene in an amazing way and puts his name out there as one of the best in the game. Turns around with Drake May, a brand new quarterback down there in Chapel Hill. In 11 games, 94 catches, 1,029 yards, and 11 touchdowns. The man leads the ACC in receptions 2 years in a row as a sophomore and as a junior. And listen, when you talk about electricity, when you talk about big play, you talk about someone who can really get the people out of there, off of their butts in the stands to be able to go crazy and be excited. Josh Downs is a really, really fun player, and I'm excited that we get to chop him up. Foreman, we'll start with you. Josh Downs, let's talk about him.
Downs does a lot of things. Does a lot of things well. Just like the first two guys we talked about, he does change that speed well in the route. He's very quick in and out of his breaks. I loved his whip route that he did that really, really well. That's something that he just seems to have mastered. He's watching he's watching Cooper Kupp do those especially when with Kupp was able to do that. I mean, we saw in the biggest stage of Cooper Kupp just basically eat Eli Apple's lunch on that like game-winning touchdown 2 years ago. Never forget Rams Super Bowl. Again, with quick feet, offers great yards after catch ability with speed and elusiveness. He's got pretty strong hands, thrives in space, and he's a pretty solid route runner. So there's a lot of things that Josh Downs brings to the table that you're going to want to see for someone who is a little bit on the shorter side, but he does bring a lot of things to the table that I think that NFL teams would enjoy.
All four downs. Listen, what are you thinking, Zach? Are you enjoying his game as much as Foreman does?
Yeah, I like him. Did you know the term Tar Heel started out as an insult?
I did not.
It was a way to look down on someone for working a low-level trade. But instead of being offended, the people of North Carolina, they co-opted the word, turning it into a point of pride and eventually into the nickname of its greatest college athletes. And Josh Downs is the next Tar Heel destined for the NFL. And after watching Downs, it's easy to see how he racked up 2,300 yards on 195 catches over the past 2 seasons. He's got very sure hands and a knack for catching the ball, again, away from his body, allowing him to use his body to shield defenders from the catch as he brings it in. This makes Downs excellent in traffic, which you wouldn't necessarily expect from a smaller player. He makes plays through blanket coverage and contact over the middle. Downs is also exceptional at reading coverages. He's often taking advantages of a corner with inside leverage by breaking off and attacking that with that whip route and out routes that Matt's talking about. His straight line speed also makes Downs especially dangerous when he gets in space.
And dissimilar to one of my favorites from a year ago, obviously a little bit of bias here with Wan'Dale Robinson. I know oftentimes we talked about how Wan'Dale would play small in some areas, especially in short area. Josh Downs does the exact opposite. In short areas, he plays pretty big to be able to, oddly, bully players when it comes to leveraging his body at only 5'10". A lot that I like about Downs' game. Again, we're getting short on time, so I'll try to help keep us moving here. When we look at drawbacks to Josh Downs, obviously not perfect. What are you thinking here, Zach, in reference to things we're not loving about him?
While Downs' speed is apparent, he doesn't always utilize it to his advantage. Rather than abruptly changing speeds to keep defenders on skates, I think Downs uses excess of choppy steps before throttling up or down. And this wasted movement allows corners a little bit extra time to react and adjust their coverage. And Downs is not as quick laterally as you might expect either, especially for a player who returned punts at UNC. And that's one of the things that we look for in these slot type receivers. That punt return usually translates to that 3-cone and that lateral agility. This, combined with his tendency to give up ground immediately after making a catch, contributes to stretches where Downs does struggle to create separation against both man and zone coverages. Ultimately, though, I think Josh Downs has the potential to be used all over the field, stretching things vertically, but also being able to go sideline to sideline, giving his future NFL team some extreme flexibility with just one pick. He's always been able to command a huge number of targets, And I think Downs' fantasy potential hinges on his ability to continue to do this from a secondary role.
And it'll be really interesting to see what offense he finds himself in. Again, we talk about variance. How an offense is going to scheme him will be really interesting to see. Foreman, talk to us. Downside.
So it's funny that you talked about how much I liked him, because I came out from watching his film not being a huge fan. I think that he plays. You guys are talking about his physicality. I think that Downs can get knocked off routes very easily. I think he plays to his size a lot. With the ball out of his hands. The ball in his hands, that's a different story. My concern with Downs is his ability to play with physicality in winning to get open. I think he's going to probably be more of a slot receiver, just because I think his ability to win in press again is going to be something that I question as well too. He shows a lot of things that I like. I just don't know how much I can get down with some things I see with him, with his lack of physicality. He's going to get pushed off the ball. I question his working against those stronger corners, where that could be something where you put him in the slot and maybe he doesn't see that press as much and he's able to win. I just don't know if I see the big upside with Downs. I think, to me, he profiles more as a wide receiver 3, whereas some of these other guys, I can see the upside there of them being higher end wide receiver 2s or wide receiver 1s. So I think Downs' upside, as some of these North Carolina wide receivers we've seen. I hate helmet scouting, but sometimes these coaches, they're seeing the same things and they're going to draft the same kind. They're going to recruit the same kind of players year over year, because that's just what they recruit. That's what fits their system. And I think that that's something that Downs could struggle with in the NFL, as we've seen his predecessors go from North Carolina to the NFL, some things that they've struggled with. And I think that Downs could be in that same camp as well, too.
Very well. On to the last couple of prospects that we have on the evening. This time we head down to Baton Rouge. Les Baton Rouge. Listen, Booty if you're nasty, Boutte if you're proper, or whatever it may be. Kayshon Boutte, anywhere from, again, 6 feet to listed approximately a 190, and some places all the way up to about 205, depending upon what it is. But and I probably used this term a little too quickly earlier when we talked about the enigma of this class. I think it's Kayshon. I think it belongs to Kayshon. In 2020, and obviously an incredible offense. We see him as a freshman be very productive, 45 catches, 735 yards, and bust onto the scene as a guy that people were already saying, hey, this is the wide receiver 1 whenever he comes out. He's the guy. And we fast forward, he gets hurt against the Wildcats, I might add. Not bragging on that, but just I remember watching it in real time. Late in the game, they're out of it. He gets hurt against the sidelines. And didn't return for the rest of that year in 2021 when he was off to a positive start, but not quite the on fire like he was previous. And then he comes back this season, and it was weird. And Brian Kelly's down there, and Jaden Daniels is the quarterback. And things, I don't know, we had a failure to launch, and then he kind of got with the program later. Then he was not going to declare because he was going to come back to school, and then decided, oh, you know what? Jaden Daniels is still my quarterback. I don't think I want to do this anymore. I need to go. Kayshon's weird. Things are strange. And I think people might be just a tad bit nervous on what's next for his prospects going forward. Zach, tell us a little bit about what you have on Kayshon.
Yeah, Kayshon Boutte is a mystery wrapped in an enigma, shrouded in an illicit rumor, and it's really difficult to know what to believe, both as to the reason why he decided to declare for the NFL draft just weeks after committing to return to school, and also what to believe about his inconsistent play on the field. I want to know just who is Kayshon Boutte. There are times when he deigns to be that Kayshon Boutte is quick within his routes. He creates separation at will, but unfortunately it seems impossible to predict when he's going to decide to be that guy. Boutte has several double move combinations that allow him to beat man coverage over the top. And when he does that, it is a thing of beauty. But his real forte, I think, is finding holes between levels of zone coverage, creating those easy throwing lanes for his quarterback. And while Boutte isn't a burner in route, once he's secured a catch, he feels much faster and can create yards with angles and contact balance as well. And that line was in Cooper Kupp's profile. Again, not comparing the two, but that feels faster with the ball than without it is an interesting piece.
So many of the guys that we particularly have liked over the last several years, and for those that may not know, a lot of my chops in terms of watching the film, a lot of it has come from the Zach Reed school of film grinding, quote unquote, as people like to put. So many of the players that we tend to gravitate to tend to be players who are really good at defeating angles with the ball, specifically in hand in the open field. And Kayshawn definitely flashes certain levels of high IQ to be able to win angles and be that geometry whiz that we tend to gravitate towards. And then there are times when he doesn't seem to care as much, or maybe doesn't feel like it. I don't know. I don't know what it is. Foreman, welcome back in, man. How do you feel in reference to the upside of one Kayshon Boutte?
I think Boutte has one of the highest upsides in this class. If I'm being completely honest with you. I turned his tape on, and I was honestly surprised about how much I liked the upside that he offers with it. Now, that's the whole thing with Boutte that we talked about, is whatever was going on at LSU there at the end. I don't even want to get into that. But he shows good yard after catch ability. He's got that suddenness that Zach was just talking about with the being Kupp-esque. He's able to be physical as a runner while also being elusive. He plays across the middle, and that's something I want to see with my receivers, is being able to play in traffic. He's able to be pressed with quickness and hand fighting, tracks the ball well, and I love seeing that nice sideline awareness as well too. To be able to do that in college is something that if you're ahead of the game there, where those can turn into extra, you know what I mean, those extra 5 to 10 catches a year by either getting scoring touchdowns or winning on the sideline, is something that's definitely going to shorten the runway, as we've talked about today.
Man, this and I'm really excited to see how the NFL values him, and we're going to see very soon. And obviously we've got the combine coming up and all these things, and we hope that he's healthy and things are well with him. Foreman, coming right back to you, man. When we look at Boutte and again the melodrama that we saw down in Baton Rouge, tell me a little bit about what you may not be so excited about when it comes to his game.
My two biggest concerns are these two things right here, which would be his hands. If you're looking at this over audio formats, he drops. I mean, there's. I think it was one of the first games this year. It just seems like he couldn't catch a cold. I don't know if his head wasn't in it or what was going on there, but my two biggest concerns with Boutte are his hands and his head. I don't know what's going on between the ears. It's something that I'm probably not going to have. He's going to be on a good bit of my teams, but he's not going to be Tyler Algier where I want him on every single one of my teams. I want him for that upside, but I think I'm going to have to, be a little less exposed to him than I think that my eyes would like to be, because my brain has a bit more trepidations about his willingness to play football, and again those hands. Whereas that's one of the things we talked about earlier, is I've kind of started to lessen the downplay, or to lessen my thoughts of them being able to catch the ball. But I mean, there's like I said, that game that earlier this year where I think he had like 4 or 5 drops in one game. That tells me I don't know what's going on there. Is it a hands thing, Or is that, again, that it all goes back to a mentality thing? And is your head in the game that I can trust you to be want to playing? I mean, maybe he's a guy where, hey, look, he's gonna stride, he's gonna go get that first big paycheck, and then he's gonna fall off. And you know what I mean? Maybe that's something you take advantage of. I know, JMic, you talk about that with running backs. Maybe we're putting Boutte in that category as well too, is where he gets that payday and then you ship him off and reap the benefits there.
Yeah, perhaps he might be that type. Zach, over to you, sir.
Boutte's lack of straight line speed is painfully obvious against really good man coverage, where he often struggles to create separation without some sort of deception. He also has issues, I think, at the initial get off versus press coverage because of his lack of instantaneous speed or quickness. And when corners are able to get their hands on Boutte, they're able to reroute him far enough away from his intended path that he either just is like, yeah, I'm done, or he's a non-factor. And Matt, you mentioned it, even Boutte's hands are inconsistent. He suffered drops on some very easy throws, further throwing into question his concentration and mental state. We've definitely got more questions than answers with Kayshon Boutte, but just 2 years ago, he was being billed as the top wide receiver in this 2023 class. Until our concerns are assuaged, I think Boutte is probably in the third tier of wide receivers coming out. But if he can regain his focus and recover from the 2 ankle surgeries, I think Boutte could be a solid producer at the next level and a steal in rookie drafts.
Oh, man, Kayshon. It's where he lands, when he's taken, there is either going to be some steals when it comes to our drafts during draft season, or it's going to be some capital that you burn up and you're like, why? I should have just lit this pick on fire and just give it a Viking funeral and call it a day. It'll be fun to see where it lands, because, man, he's so tantalizing.
I'd love to see this guy with my boy Big Red over there in Kansas City, because he can somehow get these guys who come in as a bit of a head cases, maybe not head cases, but there's some lumps there, and he molds them, and that would just be I think that's a match made in heaven there, seeing Boutte there in Kansas City. I think that'd be a great fit for him. They need that wide receiver, and he could be, I don't know, an upgrade over Juju, but he could definitely be a more cost-effective option than Juju Smith-Schuster.
You talk about rookie draft capital, like soaring in a crazy way. Man, let him go to KC. Doesn't matter the round. Like, if people will be excited. When you said Big Red at first, I thought you meant down in New Orleans with Andy Dalton. I didn't recognize that. I didn't recognize that at first, Foreman. I thought, him and Olave, they get to, he gets to stay in Louisiana. Okay, never mind. I get it. Whatever. Not an Andy Dalton fan. It's fine.
I think that Boutte needs to see his way out of Louisiana. I think that might be best for his future prospects.
Moving forward, the last player on the list for this evening. Listen, I tend to let my biases show in a fun way. And Jalin Hyatt for the Tennessee Volunteers. Listen, that shade of orange is disgusting. No, I was just kidding. I won't let my personal feelings for the school get in the way of tonight. 6 feet, approximately 175 pounds. And if the clock didn't hit 0, he'd probably still be scoring touchdowns against Kentucky, where he lost his freaking mind. And basically, he did his best Christian Watson impression this year, where he just found himself behind the defense over and over and over and over again. And it was really gross in a good way for, obviously, Tennessee and for our dynasty teams. You don't see a ton of production in those first couple of seasons in his freshman and sophomore year, 20 and 21. However, we get to 2022 this past season, 67 catches, 1,267 yards, and 15 touchdowns in the Josh Heupel offense, with Hendon Hooker being absolutely amazing. And who knows how much more prolific this could have been in those last couple of games in the year if Hendon Hooker doesn't tear his ACL. But Jalin Hyatt comes onto the scene and does amazing work. Again, we talk about Biletnikoff Award winners. We've got 2 on the panel tonight. He wins it here in 2022 as he was number 1 in the SEC in receiving yards, number 5 in the NCAA and throughout all the nation, and really showed off a lot that people are very excited about. And he could find his way in the first round of our Dynasty rookie drafts and perhaps even in the actual NFL draft. Foreman, I'll start with you. Let's talk a little bit of Jalin Hyatt. What do you got?
So Jalin Hyatt I would consider a speed merchant. This guy is fast. As the guy said in what's that? He makes fast people look not fast. That would be man, that is the movie called Don't Tell Me. Burt Reynolds, Adam Sandler. Longest Yard. Got it. Perfect. Tracks the ball well. I think he's what you're looking for in a prototypical deep threat. He's great in space and the open field with his legit speed. That's the nice things. That's the nice things I have to say about Jalin Hyatt.
Oh boy. we'll leave it there. Zach, over to you, sir.
Did Matt just run a 9 route on Jalin Hyatt
he
analysis?
did.
Just
He
done. When criticized that all of his songs sound the same, George Thorogood legendarily responded, "Well, I only learned 4 chords, but I learned them real good." And in an era where I think NFL teams covet deep speed and the ability to stretch defenses vertically, Jalin Hyatt's 9 route is bad to the bone. The dictionary definition of a field stretching wide receiver is just a 2-minute clip of Jalin Hyatt highlights. He separates over the top easily against both man and zone coverage with elite speed. He's just outrunning guys. And while Hyatt isn't a sudden cutter en route, he does use some nuanced moves that give him enough leverage that he can outrun defenders. And once Hyatt has the ball in the open field, he's headed to the paint. Like, there's no stopping him.
The frequency with which he was just able to flat out overwhelm secondaries with his speed, and Hendon just kind of laying it up there for him. It was shocking, and I'm not saying he's Christian Watson. I don't want to sit here and act like that, but I feel like so often what we watched a ton of last year, when we watched the little bit of tape that we could find on Christian Watson, was him just literally living past the secondary and just kind of hanging out, and the ball just finding him over and over again. And Jalin Hyatt, I feel like, did a very similar thing, and I'm just curious if that's something that we're going to be able to see at the next level as well. Zach, I'm coming right back to you. It's nice to be able to see him win deep. That's great and all. What else is there to be able to talk about, though?
Well, the problems arise when Jalin Hyatt is asked to do other things than get open deep. It seems reasonable that in order to utilize his speed in space, that you would be able to hit Hyatt on screens, and that would be an easy solution. But whenever he makes a catch on a screen pass, Hyatt's first instinct is to give up ground. And so he immediately takes 2 steps backwards as soon as he catches a screen pass. And that negates both the initial element of surprise, and it also negates his speed, because he now has to stop his negative momentum before hitting the gas. I also think Hyatt is very limited on the boundaries. He's not really ever asked to make plays near the sideline. But Jalin Hyatt is going to be a first-round NFL pick in April. He will cement his draft capital in a couple of weeks when he runs the 40-yard dash at the combine, and everyone loses their mind because they didn't know how fast he was. He is fast. And Jalin Hyatt is going to catch some long touchdowns in his NFL career. What you need to decide is just how much that is going to mean to your fantasy team. It's the old Ruggs conundrum. Is he going to be efficient enough? Is he going to see enough targets downfield and score enough touchdowns to be that wide receiver 3 on your team that can win you a week?
It is. Foreman, why don't you go ahead and round us out? You were rather brief on Hyatt on the front end. Let's see if the back end looks the same.
The back end will not look the same as the front end. I have questions all over the board with Hyatt. Zach mentioned a few of them. You would think a guy with the speed of Hyatt would be able to work in the short areas, and he's just not. He's basically working solely in the downfield passing game. He is basically non-existent in the red zone. I question his lateral agility. I didn't see much of it. It seems like he's just running straight the whole time. He is strictly working outside the number, other than the occasional skinny post or post route. Other than that, he's not asked to do much other than just run straight fast. And he does that very don't let me mince words. He does that very well. I just question how much of his ability for him to get is twofold. One, how much of it is Heupel's system? Heupel's system, it seems to be able to be very, very, very successful for its wide receivers. That's not the word I wanted to use. But it seems to garner a lot of success for these wide receivers. And two, if Cedric Tillman doesn't get hurt, how much of Jalin Hyatt do we even care about? Is he just this guy who catches maybe 40, 50 balls and he gets 1,000 yards because he's going to, JMic, I'm sorry, man, but that Tennessee game, was it 4 touchdowns he scored? I think I counted 4 of them.
I've repressed that memory.
Don't worry. Next year we'll be talking about this, about Marvin Harrison doing this against Penn State. So it's okay. Probably back-to-back years. But I just have so many questions with Hyatt. I don't care. He can run fast. That's great. He can run fast. But what is he going to do in the NFL when the speed he has is more, I wouldn't say neutralized, because you can't neutralize 4.3 speed. But instead of these guys running 4.5, 4.6, you've got these long NFL corners who are going to jam you, and who are going to get all up in your Kool-Aid. And Hyatt's he only works in the slot. I didn't see him play much outside, other than him doing that stupid thing where it was on it looks like he's going to run a bubble screen. He just runs in place. He did it 20 times. So much wasted movement here. I feel like I'm really crushing this guy, but for me to have him as a first round draft pick, and not only the NFL but in rookie drafts, I don't see it. There's too many questions for me to have. Yes, there's questions with other guys in this class or with guys like Boutte, but I think I would rather trust the upside of Boutte, where if I think he can get it right between the ears, I think there's a lot of upside there. I'm not the person who's going to be chasing those 2 for 70 weeks we've seen with Gabe Davis over the last 2 years, other than that one playoff game. That's just not something that's been conducive to success to me. And it's probably a guy that I'm going to be avoiding at current cost. Now, if he slips, if he's getting that draft capital, he's going to be getting drafted at the tail end of maybe not the tail end of the first round, but he's going to be drafted somewhere between the 8 to 12 range in your rookie drafts, even in probably in your single QB leagues. He's probably getting pushed at the beginning of the second in super flex, which I'm sure we'll get to at some point here. But Zach shaking his head there, he thinks I can't pull the trigger there. I'm saying the same thing over and over again, but I can't see the upside that we're seeing. Yeah, great. He's going to catch a couple 75, 80-yard touchdown passes, but how many weeks is he going to get you 2 points? How many weeks is he going to get you nothing?
So I think that's the dichotomy between NFL and fantasy. I really do, because I think for an NFL team, he's going to do a ton of things, and you're going to hear draft capital acolytes say he's a first round pick and he may be a top 20 pick. This could happen. It probably will happen because he's fast, because he's Mark Davis Zaddy. That's the thing. It's that's what they want. They want somebody who can stretch the field, because all of a sudden, if you can stretch the field vertically, now all of a sudden you've got a whole bunch of room to work with underneath from sideline to sideline. That doesn't necessarily translate to fantasy points. And I totally agree with you with spending a first round pick in a rookie draft on Jalin Hyatt. Seems like bad business, because I think what you're doing is drafting your wide receiver 3 with hopes that you're going to get boom weeks.
I think at this point, we need to make sure that we change the name of the podcast from Dynasty Dummies Rookie Hootenanny to Mark Davis Zaddy. That is absolute podcast gold if I've ever heard it. With that said, I'm sorry. Wow. It took me by surprise. Closing out the pod today, fellas. We've talked 6 players. We've been excited in some points. We've been underwhelmed in some points. And we've determined that there may be a trap or 2 or 3 if you're not careful walking out this process. We're not sure what this could look like when we get to this time, which makes it even more important for everybody listening. Take what we say. Take it in, make it part of your process. I love it. I love what people have to say about the work that we do over here, but I want to continue to encourage you. Do your work. Matt highlighted it at the beginning of the podcast. Do your work. Do your best. Do your work. Do the work on this group. Because if you love Jalin Hyatt, if you love Josh Downs, if you want to be the guy that takes Kayshon Boutte way above earlier than what everybody says, make sure that you're doing the work that says it makes sense for me to be using this capital for this so that you can turn around a year from now or 2 years from now or whenever it may be and put that in the face of every single one of your league mates and say, ha, 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 ha. And you can stick it in their face and obviously have a ball with that. So typically when we close out these episodes, we just give a general ranking of film grades for these players. And again, this isn't necessarily how they land when it comes to the entire list of wide receivers for the class, but we're talking about these 6 players, how they look in reference to each other. Again, film grades, there's a lot to be done with the combine, with the actual draft. Things can and probably will change. But our film grades, what we initially think of these players, are what they are. So with that said, Foreman, I'll kick it over to you first. Film grades as we close out. How do you rank, again, film grade wise, these 6 players?
Yeah, so I have obviously we want to put the tiers in here too. I think the tiers are almost just as important as the rankings are. So I think we're going to see probably a bit of a similarity between Zach and I at the top here. Look, JSN, Addison, pick your poison there. I do have JSN just slightly above Addison. I do think that the work he's able to do in that short intermediate area outweighs the work that Addison's able to do in the downfield game. That's my first tier. I have Johnston and Boutte in that second tier. I think if those 2 guys they're similar, that if they can hit their ceilings, I think they could actually be above those first 2. But I think their drawbacks kind of leave me to sit there to have them just a tier below that. I'm going to have Boutte higher than a lot of people. I did this last year. I just, there's always that one guy where I'm a little lower on than the consensus and a little higher on the consensus. Shout out Jalen Reagor. That people might say, I don't see it. I'm wrong sometimes, but I feel like I'm right more than I'm not. So I'm going to stick with that. And then I have Downs probably in a tier by himself. And then I have 7 layers of crap and then Jalin Hyatt.
The disrespect has reached new highs, lows. I don't know how to categorize it exactly, but Foreman, you have planted your flag in a major way, and it is not in the most positive fashion for Hyatt. So I'm not mad. I'm not mad at it. It's still a really ugly shade of orange. Sorry, I just had Tennessee. Anyway, sorry. Zach, over to you. Talk to us about how you've got these guys ranked.
Really similarly. Jaxon Smith-Njigba and Jordan Addison, you're splitting some hairs there. It's JSN for me. But week to week, I look at them, I'm like, well, maybe it's Addison. Well, it's JSN. I like a lot of the game that JSN has. I like a lot of what he does, both post catch and separation. So it's JSN, Addison, tier break. Quentin Johnston, tier of his own.
Yep.
Kayshon Boutte, tier of his own. And then Josh Downs, who is in a tier with several other players that we will talk about over the coming weeks. And then I think Jalin Hyatt. And it's not I'm not as down on Hyatt as Matt is, but I am down on that type of player for the way I play fantasy football. And again, if I can draft Hyatt in the mid-second round and have that upside of a flex play, absolutely. But I really have to squint to see a place where he gets the draft capital, he runs the 4.3 at the combine, and the dynasty community doesn't push him up. So
I think the last player we really saw that with was Hollywood Brown.
Ruggs.
But you think Ruggs is going that late?
What? Late in the Ruggs was going like 107, 108. And I had him.
That's way too high for me for Hyatt.
Yeah, but I had him at like 12 or the 201, and it just like it didn't jive with what the community and I think I've kind of resigned myself to that's where Hyatt will fall. Is I like what Hyatt does, but I don't value that as much as a lot of the community, and I definitely don't value it as highly as the NFL does, because I'm not trying to coach or play an NFL game, coach an NFL team, put together an NFL roster.
You're trying to score fantasy points, not win NFL games.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very well. I'll round us out here when it comes to this list. Listen, I don't want to be hot takey. That's really not my bag. It really isn't. I really, really like Jordan Addison.
Yeah,
I think I'm with you all in that. I believe they're in the same tier. I am probably taking Jordan Addison ahead of JSN in all my drafts, because I really, really like both players, and I want to be very clear about that. And I think that they're tiered similarly. But if I'm given the choice between the two consistently, as it currently stands, what I will bank on is Addison's ability to do a lot of really fun things down the field. And not to say that JSN won't or can't. I want to be clear. I don't want people aggregating what I'm saying. But that in itself with Addison, for me, is a slight separator. And I really like, I don't know, I really like that. And I think JSN is amazing against short to intermediate. I'm a sucker for 3-level winners. And what he's been able to do, and what was really cool to be able to see Addison do it in 2 offenses, that I'm excited. I'm really excited for Addison. We're running long. We're running super long. I've talked enough. And anyway, from there, I've got Quentin Johnston in a tier below those guys. I'm not as excited about Quentin Johnston though as I think many are in this class. From there, I'm really big on what Kayshon Boutte can do, but also Josh Downs. I have those guys similarly tiered. What Josh Downs put on film has been I think awesome. And Jalin Hyatt, similar to you all, bringing up the rear when it comes to that. But this will be fun as we continue to see this class be filled out as we go week over week, because this is it. I don't know that it's as fun at the top as it is for other classes that we've watched, where we were really excited about 4 and 5 guys typically on the last couple of years in terms of what they could do. I don't know that we have as many that we're super excited about, but JSN and Addison are chef's kiss. You really like to see what they've done. Fellas, the Hootenanny's back. It's beautiful to see. Really excited to be able to see what we can do in the coming weeks. Any final words as we get ready to kick rocks?
It's been so much fun being back. So much fun seeing your faces, hearing your voices. So much fun for me to start digging into this class for real with you gentlemen, because for the last, since before Thanksgiving, I've been spinning these prospects around in my own head, and it's really fun to get that out and get after it, especially where I enjoy talking to you guys anytime about anything. So this is just a treat. And I hope that the people listening, the people watching feel that same way. They'll be back. And I think you're right. Next week is going to be a lot of fun, because there are some players that not everybody is talking about, not everybody is looking at, that the community that has said, this class isn't that deep and the wide receivers are light this year. I think they're going to be in for a little bit of a surprise.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. Foreman, any last words as we get ready to sign off for the evening?
Nope. I was gonna say the same thing as Zach. I think the middle of this class is gonna be a lot of fun. I think there's gonna be guys where you see them go in your rookie draft at 111, and then in your next rookie draft they're gonna go 211. I think I think opinions are gonna be all over the board here with these middle guys, and I'm looking forward to speaking with you fine gentlemen about them.
Place your bets. Place your bets. Listen, Hootenanny's back. You love to see it. A tradition unlike any other, even more so than the Masters. Shout out to Jim Nance. Listen, Zach's on Twitter at TacitAssassin13. You can also find his work on Wednesday nights with The Grind Over with DLF, and Peter Howard and Russ Fisher doing their thing. You also can find him in the streets of 4for4 doing some other fun projects too. Check him out. We've got on Twitter at Fat Mormon, Matt Foreman, doing absolute fantastic work over with the fellas at BFF Dynasty. Very into the game. And it's fun to always be able to check their work out too. And I'm on Twitter at JMic. That's where I'm at when I do tweet, whenever that is, which isn't too often these days. But again, happy to be with you all. Zach, yours to take us away.
Yeah, I appreciate everybody riding with us. It's going to be a fun rookie draft season. We're going to roll it all the way next week. 6 more wide receivers. The week after that, 6 running backs. The week after that, 6 more running backs. Then we're going to do a tight end, quarterback show. And then it's the class participation portion of the program where we ask you, who did we miss? Who do you want to hear about? Is there anybody that needs to be in our catch-all show? And we're going to bring you that with fan requests. It's going to be like we'll be up on stage. You guys will do the little have the lighter out. We'll come back out. You can yell requests and we'll play the hits. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I love the Hootenanny season. I love the rookie draft season. I love being able to chop it up with you guys. And remember, we're not trying to be right. We're trying to get it right. We appreciate you listening to the Dynasty Dummies. Appreciate you riding with us. This has been the show. This has been the Dynasty Dummies.